Hello and welcome to day 3 of Diabetes Week. I'm going to go away from the ranting that I did yesterday, which I hope you enjoyed, and go back towards the serious medical explanation. This time I want to talk about hypos that I mentioned in my first video. Hypos, or hypoglycemia, is what happens when you have too much insulin, breaking down all the sugars, and then you get essentially low blood sugar. I was actually planning on doing this video a little bit differently as opposed to how I'm doing it now. What I was thinking of doing originally was injecting myself with so much insulin because I'm on pens as opposed to an insulin pump, and actually putting myself into a hypo and then recording how I feel, how I am, and then me coming out of it, and then that whole process, and to kind of give you a good reflection of what it's like to be in a hypo. However, I couldn't really find the time, and it was a little bit dangerous. I mean, I would have been in complete control of the situation, however, things could have gotten out of hand. So what kind of are the symptoms of a hypo? Well, the symptoms of a hypo and how a hypo feels is something that's very talked about among diabetics because it is one of the worst feelings ever. Some people compare it to being drunk, but not a happy, jovial kind of drunk where everything's funny. It's the kind of drunk you are where your head's on the table and you just kind of want to fall asleep on the floor because you feel that rough, you shaking, cold sweat, and just you feel like you've run a marathon. And it is not pleasant at all. So, how do you cure a hypo? Well, the answer is pretty obvious. Sugar and food. Essentially what you get told is you need some quick-acting sugar. So you could get some fruit juice or some dextrose tablets or just really high sugary foods. And then you want something longer-acting, biscuits, crisps, and all that. And usually what happens is when you're hypo, you're also very hungry and you have no real idea of self-restraint, so you have a tendency to about eat half the kitchen. So if you have a diabetic friend and they are going through a hypo, there is just a few things you could do to help out. Mainly just stay with them and make sure they're safe, make sure they're okay, and make sure that kind of when they're in that state of hypo, and they're coming out of a hypo, because coming out of a hypo can be just as bad as being in a hypo. You feel almost even worse, because sometimes the sugars will rise up a bit slower, and it's really sluggish. You just feel really sluggish, and it's a bit horrible. But what you could do is you could just kind of stay with them, make sure they're okay, look after them a bit, and just be like, right, okay, you feeling okay now? Do we need to go get you more food? You know, if you're out with a friend and they're having that situation, you're like not in an establishment or whatever, pizza. Get them some pizza and a can of Coke, and that will do more than enough to help them. So I'm sure it's kind of pretty self-explanatory to just kind of look after them, but hypos can be very dangerous, and it's not something to be taken lightly. So that was day 3 of Diabetes Week. As ever, if there are any questions, leave those down in the comments down below. I'm David Nicol. I'll see you next time. Bye.